So, welcome to InDesign. This is what you should see roughly when you open up the program. And in order to make a new document, over on the left, I'll click Create New. And just like in Photoshop, we have the option to create a print document or a web document. Again, print is better that'll give you options of different paper sizes, and web will give you generally options of different screen resolutions. So we'll go to print, and then over here on the right in inches, I'll set my document to width of 11 by 17. I guess you could also, so over here where it says orientation, you could toggle those between portrait and landscape. So you can choose whichever orientation you think would work best. The other thing I'm going to do is down here where it says facing pages, I'm going to uncheck that option. So facing pages is useful if you're making a booklet or something like that where you would have two pages open at the same time, and you wanted to look at the layout that way. But for what we're doing, it's going to be mostly looked at on a screen, one page at a time. So we'll turn that off. And when I'm ready, you can also add a couple different pages here if you want, but we can do that later. So I'll go ahead and click Create. And here we are. So this is my page. The way to navigate in InDesign is if you hold the Alt key on the keyboard and scroll your mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out. And if you hold the space bar and click and drag, you can pan around. So here's my page. You can see by the rulers that it's 11 by 17. And I have a magenta purple outline that shows me where my margins are. And that's pretty useful for printing because most printers don't print all the way to the edge of the paper, and it just assists us with the layout. So the first thing I want to do is kind of establish a layout and lay out some information that I want to be on every page. The easiest way to do that is to use what's called a master spread, which is kind of like a template. And we can make different ones and kind of apply them to pages, and then they'll be updated automatically. So what I first want to do is open the Pages panel. If you go up to Window at the top and go to Pages, you should see a menu kind of like this. So in here, we can make more pages. Oops, I'm making more master spreads. I don't want to do that. So I'll click down below in this area. So I can make more pages, and you can see now I have 3 different pages in my booklet here if I zoom out. And I can also delete them. I can change the order of them by dragging them around. And up at the top, we have 2 options here where it says, you should have by default one where it says none, which just means that there will be no master spread applied. And then we have what's called a master. So if I double click on the master, I can put information on this page that will then be applied to every page. So for example, on the left, if I go to type, and I'll make a text box by clicking and dragging, and I'll type in ARC510A. This is, by the way, our file naming convention. I think it's written on the assignment sheet. So here, on our assignment sheet near the bottom, you'll see that we want to write the class, the year, and the semester, the assignment, and then first name, last name. So I'll just put some of that information on the page. So ARC 510A, 2020 summer, assignment 1, and then I'll write my name. And you can lay out that information however you want. You can put it in separate places if you want to. So now, once I've written out some information, I can highlight it. And up at the top, you should see when we have the text tool like active, the option to change a font. So I can click on the drop down, and I can go to a different font there. And I can adjust what like typeface I'm using with that font. And I can adjust the size of it. So yeah, I can choose my font that way. And if you don't, so I'm not entirely sure what the menus will look like by default. I know that when you first install InDesign, you may not have all these menus at the top. Up here at the top, there's a quick, like, I don't know how this comes by default, but I like to put mine on Essentials. This will change like what my menus look like: digital publishing, book. So anyway, if you don't see some of the stuff that I see, just change it to Essentials and see if that helps you. But so if you don't see the type menu up at the top, you can also get to that menu or any other menu by going under Window and go to Type and Tables and go to Character. And so over here on the right, that's all the same options that I just had. I can change the size and the font and all those things. So now if I position this kind of over here near the bottom of right of my page, and I can also resize my text box. I can change the justification if I go in here again. So in order to change the justification, I'll double click inside the text box so I can see my cursor. And then a new button appears up at the top where I can change the alignment of the text within the text box. And I can right justify it. So then I'll put it down here over here in the right hand corner. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just put like some space between. Not quite so awkward. Okay, so I'll throw that in the bottom right hand corner. And if I wanted to like snap the size of my text box, so the text box won't change the font; it'll just like resort the words within the box whenever I scale it. But if I wanted to like snap it to the text, I can also like double click on this grip, and that way I can align the bottom of the text to my margin there. And I want to put one other piece of information here, which is the page number. So I'm going to make another text box, and I can do that by making another text box, or I can just copy paste this one. So I'll select this one. You can hit Control C, Control V. You can also go to Edit, Copy, and Paste. Or in InDesign and in a couple other Adobe software, one way to copy stuff is to hold Alt on the keyboard. And you can see when I drag it, I clicked and dragged, and I'm holding Alt, and my mouse cursor turns from like a single arrow to a double arrow. So if I drag it while I'm holding Alt and then let go of the mouse, I made a copy. And I'll then left justify this. I'm going to write page space. And then in order to insert the page number, I'll go to, up at the top, I'll go to Type, Insert Special Character, and let's see, which one is it? Markers, and I'll hit current page number. So right here, it shows up as A, and that's fine. That's kind of that's a placeholder. And I'll place that in the bottom left-hand corner. And so then I'm still on my master page, remember. So what I want to do is as I continue editing the document, I'm going to go back out onto the page here. And you can see on each page, I have a little A, which indicates that the A master is applied to that page. And so on each page, I have all that information I just added. The page number changes depending on the page, and it's in the same place each time. So that's kind of a quick way to put information that you want on every page with the master. And if you ever wanted to have, like, let's say I had a cover page and I didn't want that information, I can also apply by just clicking and dragging the none, and that'll replace the A master. Or I can put the A master back, or I can make new ones in here by right-clicking in this box. I want to have different information on different pages. All right, so that's how we kind of get the basic information down. I can also, if I wanted to, like, have some kind of graphic stuff in here. Let's say I wanted a line at the top and bottom of my page, I can go on my master and get the line tool and draw a line in there. And in order to edit the line, I can adjust the color of it. if I go to a panel called stroke, I can adjust the weight of that line, the thickness of it. And you can also have a couple dashed line options. And again, that would be applied to every page in my document now. Just like that. Now, when I want to lay out information, this is also something that it's useful to do on the master spread if you want to. I can set up in InDesign what are called guidelines, I think. And in order to make a guideline, I can click and drag from either ruler at the top or at the side onto my page. And I'll put it, a little next bubble will tell me where I'm at, but it's about 5 inches in right there. And I can put one like, I don't know, for my title, put one inch down. Okay, so that makes these kind of cyan lines, and that's only on one page. So I meant to do that on my master, but if I do it on my master, it'll be on every page. And they don't print, so you don't have to worry about that. So this is like another kind of line that I can now, so if I said material culture of a basket, let's say that's my title. I can now use my guidelines to like snap to that and line it up and stuff. And again, the guidelines won't print, but it'll be easy for me to align something on my page. So I can also do that on the master spread rather than on each page. And if I do it on the master, of course, it'll be on each page. Just like that. So we can line things up consistently. And then, so that's how you kind of add font, and you can use the guidelines for laying things out. The other thing that's really useful is when you want to lay out images and stuff. And this is kind of a tricky thing with InDesign. It takes a little bit getting used to, but it's really useful. So if I bring an image in and I'm just dragging it into my document, and you can see I have a little thumbnail of the image, and I can click. So I have a couple options at this point. I can click somewhere, and so it's placed my image, and it's automatically placed it at a size based on the size of the image itself. I'm not sure. So yeah, if I have the image selected and I go to Info, it'll tell me what the resolution of that image is on my page, which is really useful, right? I don't want any blurry or pixelated images. Like I mentioned in the Photoshop tutorial, a good minimum resolution is 150 dpi. 300 is also good. 300 is kind of actually like upper limit. You don't necessarily need anything higher res than that, because again, most printers, most screens don't necessarily have more resolution than that. But so we want to have an image that's placed at a good scale. Now, if I hit Control Z to undo that, rather than just clicking, I can click and drag, and that'll allow me to scale and place my image at the same time. Now you can see I'm just moving my mouse all over it, but it's keeping the proportions of the height and width of the image constrained so that I'm not like distorting the image. If I do want to distort it, I think I can hold Shift, but I don't want to distort it, so I can do that. And again, I can see the resolution of the image and the resolution that it is on my page. So because it's smaller, it's kind of higher res for how large it is. Now, when you are editing images and placing images in InDesign, there's actually two outlines that you need to pay attention to. One of them is every time I select an image, I get a blue outline. And the blue outline is actually what's called, I forget what it's called, it's like a cropping boundary. So if I resize my blue outline, it didn't actually rescale my image, it just cropped it, which is actually really useful to be able to quickly crop images and kind of line them up to each other, or size them to each other. But if I wanted to resize my image, I can double click the image. Now you can see I have kind of like a brown outline. And if I scale that, it'll scale the image. Or if I click and drag, it'll move it. And again, I can drag a corner anywhere I want. That obviously distorted it. And by holding Shift, I can ensure that I don't distort it. By holding Alt, I can scale it around the center, just like in Photoshop. And then I'll click outside of the box to deselect it. And so once I have these things kind of laid out to each other, I can move them around and so on. Now let's say I wanted to scale the cropping boundary and the image at the same time. If I select it again, I'll hold Control-Shift on the keyboard, and I'll click and drag it. Actually, I think you just have to hold. Yeah, so you just have to hold Control, but Shift will keep it proportional again. If you hold Control, you'll scale both the image and the cropping boundary at the same time. So that's kind of how you lay out images and stuff like that. Now, another quick trick for, let's say I had a bunch of images, like I want to make a grid of images or something. I can also place multiple images at the same time. Actually, let me quickly show you. So rather than dragging an image in, I can also go to File, Place, oh yeah, here it is, Place. That's the other way to insert a new image into my document. Also Control D on the keyboard. And so I can place an image in there if I want to. So if I click one image, I get the same thing I had before, and I can place it, or I can place and scale it. Or if I go to File, Place, let's say I have a few images that I want to lay out with each other. So I selected, by holding Control on the keyboard, 6 images, and I'll click Open. And so now I have 6 images there. So I can place them one at a time if I want to, or I can hold Control-Shift on the keyboard, and you can see my icon, my cursor icon has changed to a little arrow with a grid. And then if I click and drag, it actually automatically puts all the images in a grid and equally sizes and spaces them, which is awesome. Now, again, like I was explaining with the text box, if I wanted to snap the outline of this object to, snap the cropping boundary to the image, I can just click it, oops, and double click the grip in the direction that I want to snap it. And so I can resize it like that. And just like before, when I had one image, if I wanted to resize this whole thing, I can just grab them all at the same time. And I'll hold Control on the keyboard and Shift. And that way I'm scaling all the images and all the cropping boundaries together. That way I'm keeping them consistently laid out. Now let's say I changed something, or I wanted to move something, or whatever. Or let's say I got the scale of the images right. So let's say I don't like that image and I don't like that image. I'll delete them. So now I want to put all 4 of these images in the same row together. So again, I'll scale these down a little bit. I'm going to move this guy up here, and I'm going to scale it so that it matches. And I have, so you'll see that things kind of snap. What I have on is under, gosh, where is it? I have a thing called Smart Guides turned on. Yeah, if you go to View and you go to Grids and Guides, there's a thing called Smart Guides, and there's a thing called Snap to Guides. I have both those things turned on. And that way I know, for example, I scaled that image and it's snapping with that magenta line to the center of the page. And when I scale it, it's snapping with that green line to the size of the other images. So I can kind of match it in terms of scale to the other images. Now let's say I wanted to, so I have these other images laid out. Oops, let me scale them all at the same time. So now they're fit within the margins of my page, but they're not evenly spaced anymore. So let me scale even more. In order to evenly space them out, and let's say even I have one of them misaligned or 2 of them misaligned, or something, there's scattered images. So there's a really useful tool called Align in InDesign, and it's under Window, Object Layout, Align. And I have the panel open over here. So align allows me to align objects to each other. For example, if I want to move this image up so that it's aligned with the top of that image, I'll select both of them at the same time. And then I can click this little button, Align Top Edges, and it'll bring that one up to that one. Oh, I just messed up. So actually, there's over here where it says Align To, I have the option Align to Page selected. So I have a couple options there. I could align it to the margin if I wanted it to go right up to the top. Or if I wanted to align that image to that image, I can also select Align to Selection and click the Align to Top button again, and so it aligned them to each other. And I can also align them like along a center point rather than an edge. So if I want to align them in one row, I can click Align Vertical Center. Now they're all in a row. And I can also distribute objects the same way. So I can distribute horizontal center to make them evenly spaced across the page. So that'll save you a lot of kind of small adjustments, tweaking, trying to get things to look good and lined up. Okay. Now the other thing, let's see here. I just wanted to mention briefly is how placing images in InDesign works. So what I've actually done when I place an image is I've linked it to a file. And what that means is when I save this as an InDesign file, none of these pictures are part of that file. So if I now go to my folder where I've saved these images, right there, and let's see, which one did I have? That one. And I delete that file. Now you can see a little icon showed up telling me that the link is missing. And over here in the link panel, so again, under Window, Links, we can see all the images and content that we've put in our InDesign document that's like linked to an external file. And I can see that that one's missing, which means I either moved the file or deleted it, right? And what that means is that when I go to export this file to a PDF, I'm going to get a low, kind of crappy resolution version of that image because it's just saved a kind of preview quality version. Now, sometimes I want to like change an image or I want to link it to a different file or something like that. So to do all that stuff, we can do it inside the links panel. One of them is to, I can click, oh yeah, so if I change a file that's external to my InDesign document, I can click on this little update and it'll reflect the change. It'll like check with my file again and make sure it's the most up-to-date version. But I can also go over here to the little two chains together, and we go to that folder, and I can link it to a different file. Very quick open, and then it'll place that image in there. And that one looks like low res. Yeah, it's too small. So that, which actually brings me to my next point, which is so right now we're kind of looking at the document in a preview mode, which is why we can see the margins, we see these blue outlines around the text, we see the grid lines, et cetera, et cetera. And actually, you'll notice that the images, even the ones that are good enough quality, won't show up at full quality, just because it'll help your computer run faster as you have a bunch of images and you're laying them out. So if we wanted to kind of check in and see how this thing will look when we print it, we can go to View up at the top and click on this little button, Overprint Preview. So you can see there, I guess it doesn't hide the margins, but all the blue outlines disappeared and the images showed up at full quality, right? At full resolution. And so we can kind of check in that everything is looking the way we want it to. So you don't really, I mean, you can work in Overprint Preview if you want. I find it useful to be able to see the boundaries of objects and text and stuff like that. But it'll also just help your computer run way, way faster and smoother if you don't have it on all the time. But anyway, that's how you kind of toggle in and out of that. So I think the last thing is just exporting. So once I'm done laying out my document and I have all the information in here that I want, and I have it laid out the way I want, save the file as an InDesign file because you want to be able to go back and make adjustments, or if you ever have to put some of this information into a portfolio, you can copy it. But we also want to export a PDF file. So when I'm done laying out my document, I'm going to go to File, Export, and let's see here. I'll choose a place to save it. I'm just going to copy the URL there. And I can name it whatever I want. So sorry, I should name it the file naming convention that's it's on the assignment sheet. So class, year, semester, assignment, name. And so there's two options under the type. Well, there's a bunch of options, but we want to save it as a PDF. We have two options for PDF. One of them is called interactive, and one of them is called print. So when you make a PDF for, say, a presentation, like a lecture or something, you can put videos in there, you can put sound files in there, and because you're going to present it digitally, all that stuff can be in the PDF. So if we had like any kind of like a video file or a sound file embedded in our PDF, we would want to export to interactive. But if we're exporting it in order to print it, or if there's no interactive media, we can just select print PDF. And yeah, so name the file and then click save, and you'll see another dialog show up. So this has a few options. One of them will be what's the size of our document. We have options for image quality. So when you save a InDesign document to a PDF, you can save down the image quality, and that'll help you keep your file size under control. So under compression, it'll say color images. I want to downsample anything above 450 dpi or pixels per inch to 300. And same for grayscale, and there's no reason not to just do the same. I mean, obviously, monochrome images are generally speaking lower file size, but so we'll just do the same for that. And you can mess with those options if you want. All right, so once we're done with that, we'll go ahead and click export. And so this is unlike printing to PDF. So you can print directly from InDesign to a printer if you have a printer hooked up. You can also print to, let me just open the PDF here. So there's our PDF, and it's all flat and everything's like. And so that file is like, it's 1.3 of a megabyte. So you can also print directly from InDesign. You can also print to PDF. Now, when you print a PDF, you do have to set the paper size. It won't automatically use whatever paper size you have in the document. In order to adjust that, you just go to Setup, and under Paper Size, you choose whatever paper size you've selected, or you can set a custom one. So we're at 11 by 17. And you can see over here on the right in this little preview, it'll indicate whether or not you're aligned to that, right? So whether it's the right size and whether it's aligned. And you can also choose to scale it relative to the paper size if you want. So like I could print this 11 by 17 PDF to 8.5 by 11 if I wanted to. Just hit scale to fit, and it would crop it to that paper size. And then I could click print. But yeah, so for PDF, it's much, much easier, better just to export it from InDesign. And yeah, so save the file. And remember that the links are not part of the file. They're separate. So if you move them to a different folder, you'll have to relink them in the links panel because InDesign won't know where they went. And obviously don't delete them. All right, I think that's about it for this video, and I will sign off.